Okay, formally, a very good morning to you all. And this is the third webinar organized by Sri Lanka Responsible Care Council. The first, actually, a few months back, this is one of the series of webinars conducted by Sri Lanka Responsible Care Council. So you'll be getting more knowledge, more understanding on Sri Lanka Responsible Care Council with the next presentations. In a nutshell, to reduce the human losses and the property losses along the supply chain of chemicals industry. So that is one of the main objective of setting up and establishing responsible care and the concept behind the responsible care. So you'll be learning more on this responsible care and how the work safety environments, what is the link with the responsible care and the work safety. So you will be getting more information on that during this entire webinar series. So if I before I introduce our panel, the speakers, I will give you a very brief overview of the lineup of the today's session. The first, we would like to welcome Mr. Piris to do some kind of the initial welcome to set the background for the session, and also Mr. Barry Dyer will follow by the introductory remarks, and then we will move on to introduction, kind of a brief introduction to Sri Lanka Responsible Care Council by Mr. Sena Piris, and also then to have a good discussion to setting up the backdrop to continue with Mr. Barry's presentation. We have invited Mr. Eranga Dilhan to do some kind of a background information about the challenges faced by local industries on workplace safety. And then followed by that, Mr. Barry Dyer will do a very comprehensive presentation on responsible care and the workplace safety. And also followed by that, there will be a case study just to give some kind of understanding as how this responsible care incorporated in the work safety environment. So by presenting a case study again by Mr. Dilhan, and we will have fairly enough time to have to answer your questions if you have very critical questions, probably in the 20-30 minutes. And so there is a very brief outline of the today's webinar. Before we start, I would like all you to give some of the ground rules. Please mute your microphone if you are not speaking. And during the question and answer session, you can unmute your mic and even your video, and you can interact with the panelists. And also during, if you have any questions, queries, you can put your question and queries in the chat box. It's open for you. So we will try to answer all your queries and questions with the support of our very eminent panelists. Start with that, I would like to give very brief introduction of the panelist, Mr. Engineer Sena Piris. He is President Sri Lanka Responsible Care Council and also former CEO National Cleaner Production Center. I would like to invite Mr. Sena Piris to welcome all the participants and to give some kind of understanding of the today's webinar series. As I have mentioned, this is the third webinar. Previously, Responsible Care Council conducted webinar on global harmonized system on chemicals labeling, and then the chemical safety, and this is the third one, responsible care and the work safety, and there will be a fourth one, and we'll be inviting for that, and we will give some brief introduction for that at the end of this session. Mr. Piris, it's over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Wahala. Good morning to all of you. Now, first of all, let me welcome Mr. Barry Dyer, actually our mentor, who helped us from the very beginning to set up Lanka Responsible Care Council. A lot of hard work was put by him, visiting us and then working with us and industries. So in addition to that, I think he has been throughout helping us in our work. So you are welcome, Mr. Dyer, for this webinar. And being the chief presenter, I think your knowledge, we are willing to listen to you. Then I would like to welcome all the first, actually, who are supporting us, the Sabaragamuwa University, as well as the MAS, the holdings, as well as Haley's group for supporting us in conducting this. I welcome all of you. In addition to that, I welcome all the participants, and I am not going to explain the purpose behind. As you know, we are planning always to improve the businesses, to improve their environment, safety and health aspects using responsible care. So in this regard, we are having several seminars as explained by Dr. Wahala. So I welcome all of you for this webinar, and without taking much time, I hand over to Dr. Wahala.
Thank you very much, Mr. Piris. I would like to invite Mr. Barry just to give some the brief overview before we move on to the next session.
One, everybody, and greetings from New Zealand. As always, delighted to be joining you this morning for this latest Responsible Care webinar. It's humbling to be aware of the progress that the Lankan Responsible Care Council, led by Mr. Peris and his team, is making in improving your knowledge of chemical safety. And if we can look back and see the enormous progress that has been made in the Lankan responsible business community, I think you can all be very proud of what you are doing. And I welcome the opportunity to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barry. Next, according to the agenda, I would like to invite again Mr. Sena Piris, President, Sri Lanka Responsible Care Council, to give a brief introduction about the Sri Lanka Responsible Care and the activities and what is our responsible on this chemicals supply chain management, enhancement of the quality and the safety of this chemical supply chain management. Over to you.
Thank you. As I think most of you know, Lanka Responsible Care Council was established many years ago, almost close to 10 years now, right? And that's in 2012, but I mean, we are reaching 10 years. And during this year, our mission was to actually help industries to improve their chemical-related safety, health, and environment performance within the company and within the country, and to provide leadership to them to have a safe workplace, protecting the environment as well as human life and all the infrastructure and properties. So in this regard, we have been working quite hard. In the past, we have Professor Ajit Alvis also as a director, and Mr. Barry has been a facilitator and mentor of our organization. And we have an executive committee representing different associations, industries. And with this, we have continued to work with the people, and we have so many members. I mean, as you can see, the names are the brand, the owners are there, and several known companies are the reputed companies are there with us. And as you know, we in this country, we are having laws and regulations related to chemicals management. And since a lot of people are here with us, I would like to say most of the members are with us. I would like to say that this part is quite known to them. But there may be people who are not members of Lanka Responsible Care Council. So I would like to tell you that we have very rigorous control of our imports of chemicals through our different actually activities, and we have what is called import and export regulations, and then also by customs. After that, of course, there are several regulations operating to control certain chemicals. One is Chemical Weapons Convention Act, and then we have the Ministry of Industry was the earlier Chemical Weapons Convention Act, the guardian, but now it is under Ministry of Defense. Then also we have Ministry of Finance and Planning, who are responsible for import and export as well as customs, have their own regulations. And we have a very stringent control of pesticide acts and import and export act, as I told you, quite significant in our country. And then one of the most important things related to environment is National Environment Act, and which we have to definitely comply with. Then we have the Factories Ordinance related to safety and health. Well, this is quite an old ordinance, as you know, and it is being reviewed now, and very soon we may have an amendment. So with these two, National Environment Act and Factories Ordinance, we are covering environment, safety and health. In addition to that, there are several other acts, Explosive Act, and then also we have Precursor Chemical Acts as well. Another very important point is Sri Lanka is now developing chemicals management policy, and that policy is now available in the public domain for the public to make comments or whatever the opinions they have on this chemical policy. So I invite all of you to look at it, and then maybe you can go to the Ministry of Environment website, and it has the chemical policy. In that one, you can look at it and make your recommendations. With this in mind, because that is the mandatory compliance. But what we want is, we want the companies, the responsible care companies and members of our LRCC to go beyond compliance. That's why we want to actually make sure that everybody take part in our activities. So as you can see, we want to make sure that our companies do the best practice applications and share with you all the knowledge and the new knowledge, and also the update everybody related to chemicals management globally. And a lot of information and resources can be provided by us. And we are always working with chemical suppliers, distributors, as well as with the users. And we want to be the center of excellence in Sri Lanka. So we invite all the companies who are producing chemicals, importing chemicals, and using chemicals to become members and benefit from this, the wide global knowledge on responsible care. I think with this I conclude. We can later talk about it more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferris. It's very quick and very, it covers everything about the Responsible Care Council. And so if you look at the acts and ordinance and the international treaties, that we are responsible, and we see that with the Responsible Care Council, voluntary, we are contributing to achieve support the implementation of these regulations in the country. So therefore, as Mr. Sena Ferris mentioned, so all the chemical producers, importers, distributors can join with these responsible care activities to support this while making the good environment for all of us. With that, again, thank you very much, Mr. Ferris, and I would like to invite Mr. Eranga Dilhan, General Manager Sustainability, of Mas Krida, and also executive committee member of Sri Lanka Responsible Care Council with a lot of experience on this industry and with a lot of contribution has done to the industry to make it better. He actually, Mr. Eranga Dilhan will discuss about the challenges faced by local industries on workplace safety, which will support Mr. Barry Dyer to elaborate on how this responsible care will be supported to workplace safety. So with that, I would like to invite Mr. Eranga Dilhan to proceed with the presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wahala, for that generous introduction. Good morning, everyone, and ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm going to touch you on about current challenges that we see in the industry when it comes to local context. So when we consider our industry and the contribution for the economy, as per the Central Bank Report 2020, we are not a large country. Because of that, we do not have a large economy at this moment. We have 87 billion US dollars GDP, whereas out of that, 27 billion is coming from the industry. Still, the major contribution is from service sector, then the industry. After that, we have agriculture. So overall context is considered, industry is representing 30% of the GDP. When it comes to industry, how it's been evolving over the years from the late industry revolution, then how it evolved over the last couple of centuries are considered. Now we are in an era we call Industry 4.0. In some organizations, some industries, as well as some countries, especially talk about Industry 5.0 as well. When it comes to our industry, we have all combination of the stages. For example, we have industries coming under Industry 1.0, where that steam is the main source of power. Whereas we have many industries coming under Industry 2.0, we are predominantly working with what we call electricity driven operations, whether it is chemical or non-chemical. That is how it's been. Then basic information technology platforms being used, that is Industry 3.4. Industry 4.0, about that we talk about industry automation, artificial intelligence, and all these things. So industry is evolving when it comes to global context. As a country, we also been evolving. And with that context, we would like to see how this workplace safety take in a place. Because there are a lot of risk elements being added, and also there are a lot of chemicals being added into our day-to-day life, as well as the products that we consume as consumers, as well as what we manufacture as industries. So in that context, we really need to understand what are the challenges that we have in terms of workplace safety. However, when it comes to numbers, we are a country that we also do not have adequate reporting. Underreporting is something being identified even by the government as well as the ILO as well. We've been reporting 4,000 accidents that will contribute 600,000 man days lost per year. But exact number must be more than this. So having said that, I would like to share with you a couple of incidents that we observed or which was publicized in the main media stream, so that I'm going to share a couple of them to see where we are, where we see certain gaps. Starting from this is one of the accidents taken place 3 years ago during a vacation period, where that set of employees were assigned to do the repair work or the cleaning work in effluent treatment plant of one of the latex factories in Sri Lanka. But it was resulted that toxic ammonia gas started inhaling. As a result of that, end of the day, 2 of the employees had to compromise their lives. Not only that, the important thing message here is there were some people who came to rescue from the community or the immediate community from the factory. Out of them also, 3 had to compromise their lives because that they were not having enough sufficient knowledge on what's went on, and also they were not trained well. And when it comes to process aspects are considered also, it was a confined space, it was with chemicals, there was a risk associated with in terms of generating toxic gas. Those things have not been identified when it comes to the risk assessment process, as well as when you consider overall the process that they had defined or management system established. So this is one of the good case studies for us to understand the risk element that we may not see, or we may not be able to anticipate when we are working in the industry in day-to-day life. Moving on, this was another same kind of an accident. This was taken place at one of the largest location in the country, that is the oil refinery of Sri Lanka, way back in 2013. And this was also related to chemicals, releasing of hydrogen sulfide, which is a toxic gas that 2 employees who engage in the repair work of the pipeline had to compromise their lives. So in this process also considered there were gaps in terms of the maintenance management systems, as well as the condition monitoring system, as well as overall understanding of mitigation actions or the response action in case of an emergency situation. So those are some of the things highlighted in this accident as well. This is again an eye-opener for all of us. Not only chemical, but also other areas also, we have some challenges. One of them is electrocution. This is a report from Public Utilities Commission Sri Lanka. It reflected that 103 compromised their lives in 2019 because of electrocution. Part of them are industry, and not only industry representation here, but also we have representation of domestic accidents as well for this. This is also one of the areas. When it comes to these accidents or the electrocution, there are certain gaps in terms of the infrastructure and also the awareness, and also how we behave, how we work, and how we follow the processes when it comes to working with electrical energy energized sources. Moving on, this is not an accident from India, even though the headline says an Indian national. In fact, that is from a local factory. This is in this year. Despite the pandemic, we've seen still certain risk elements we may not really address it. Boil explosion is one of the key causes of the recent fatal accident in Sri Lanka in the industry. When you consider this, there are certain gaps. One of them is obviously to which extent that we have established control processes or management systems in terms of operations of boiler. We know there are certain legal requirements because boiler or the preservers have been identified as one of the high risk category of machineries as per the factory's ordinance, and also there is a stringent measures of annual certification to the certification required license for the operators. There are so many things being identified. Still, we are in a country where that we make fatal accidents because of the explosion of boilers. So that is alarming still. Therefore, there is something that there is a gap, maybe with the knowledge, maybe with the infrastructure, maybe with the process. So we will have to look at that as well. So when it comes to all these accidents and incidents that I shared with you, those are eye-openers. Sometimes when we work in the industry in day-to-day life, we may not see certain challenges which may be covered. So it's time for us to look at what could be the challenges that we see as an industry, as well as an organization as well. Let me share a couple of things based on the statistics as well as based on the experiences that we have. One of the things was that we have not evolved in terms of statutory framework of the country, because still we have been using the regulations that was made way back. I would say with more than 50 to 60 years, and the amendments made for this regulation also not been that evolved. So that creates certain gaps in terms of the statutory framework. Apart from that, as you may be aware, industry is evolving. With the evolvement of the industry, there are a lot of risk components coming into act. And also none of these occupation safety and health related regulations adequately cover measures for chemical safety, for instance. The risk assessment process is not really defined. What's framework to be made. And also still we do not have well-established national-wide industry code as well in the form of the industry scale or the regulatory framework. That's one of the challenges commonly industry is facing. Second one is lack of infrastructure. That is again because of that there is no standardized standards or the codes for the machines, equipment, whatever that we manage, even for the infrastructure, that will create a risk as well, because then as there is no regulation, the gaps always could be there. Apart from that, the maintenance is also part of that. And also, even though there are certain standards globally available, the guidelines are there. There are certain ISO standards, there are certain machine directives, there are certain safety chemical related standards available in the world. And also there are certain standards, the certifications are also there. So one of the challenges is their access to those standards. Some of them are very expensive, and also you may need to register, and you should know what exactly and from where you need to get that. Other one is certification are also somewhat expensive in the country. Apart from that, most of the things are in the language of English. Some may not really be able to grab the essence of it so that they can apply in the industry. That's also one of the challenges we see in overall the context is the international standards that we may be looking at. Apart from that, competent resources in ground, still we talk about that there are certain institutes that we provide trainings and all these things. When it comes to the practical context, even though some resources we have in the factory flow, the knowledge gap is prominent. Hands-on experience, how to apply whatever that they have learned is a question. So therefore, the resources or the competence of resources is also still an issue for overall industry is considered, especially how to conduct a risk assessment, for example, how to do chemical risk assessment, what are the measures to be considered when you are storing a chemical, for instance, what are the machine safety standards available, what are the special measures to be made in terms of handling pressure vessels. All these things are still a gap in terms of the knowledge and the competency. I've seen some of I have met some of the health and safety champions or in the factories, in some industries, that they have not seen the boiler or the air compressor room in their facility. What that reflects, that is a part of the engineer's job, and that health and safety person has not really got engaged or has no clue on what's going in the industry. So those are certain gaps we see in terms of the resources. Not only that, but also if I am from industry, I have a challenge to get the consultant service. That's one of the ways that we can evolve. Maybe we may reach out some consultants in the industry to get the supports and guidelines. But overall content, there are two types of challenge. One is the quality of the available consultants maybe that we could hire, and they may not really be up to date with the knowledge, experience. That's one of the areas that industry may face. Other thing is it's very expensive. If you need to get the right person to your industry, it's not an easy. It's because of it's expensive in the lower country context is considered. Because of that, it's not being prioritized in some industries. And also when it comes to knowledge and culture, we are in a country where that risk perception is low in general context. And when you go out from your factory or come out from your home, you could see how we behave in the road and how we behave in our day-to-day life. So safety is not really a priority for us. So when it comes to industry also, we bring people from outside to the factory with the same background and the culture. So transforming them into the culture that you want, it's not an easy task. You need to put continuous effort, and you need to transform them with an extra effort that you will put. And apart from that, the safety is not a business strategy in most of the organizations in the country, because there is no real risk that they may foresee, even though that there are hidden risk element that they may have not anticipated because of the above reasons of the challenges I explained. As a result of that, industry is driven, or the business strategy is driven in one direction, whereas the required capability enhancement may not be happening in the factory floor of the organization. So that at some point that will create a disaster, or maybe we may not really be efficient, or we may not have the right process or right people in the organization. So those are some, in a nutshell, those are some of the challenges we see in the industry. So responsible care is one of the ways that definitely we could look at these challenges, to which extent that we could fulfill the gaps that we see. So we will be able to understand how it's been addressed when Mr. Barry Dyer will share his insights on responsible care. With that, I will conclude my presentation. Over to you, Dr. Sampath Wala.
Thank you very much, Mr. Iranga. With the experience, actually, you have covered from regulatory framework, the challenges from regulatory framework to as a business strategy. So almost seven areas you have very clearly explained, and covering all the industries. So this is very generic to all the industries. So we are having, and we are experiencing those challenges at the moment. So thank you very much for sharing your insight and compiling and summarizing all the very vast area to have very good understanding to all of us, and that will be a very good backdrop to continue with Mr. Barry's presentation. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Iranga. With that, actually, according to our agenda, we will move on to the next item. That is a key component of this webinar. Our keynote speaker, we would say, Mr. Barry Dyer, always with us all the time. And before we move on to his presentation, it's our responsibility to introduce Mr. Barry Dyer for our audience in Sri Lanka. He's at the moment Chief Executive Officer, Responsible Care New Zealand. Very familiar figure. He's very familiar figure throughout the international responsible care community. He's a board member of International Council of Chemicals Association, ICCA, a vice president of the Asia Pacific Responsible Care Organization, APRC, and facilitating the development and expansion of responsible care association worldwide. He's very key, the key figure in this responsible care, the community to make the world's environment, the chemical supply chain more sustainable chemical supply chain. And also Barry is participating in implementing GHS-based national chemical management regulations, and also practice throughout the world, including importantly mentoring Sri Lanka the world-class best practice workplace chemical safety and required by the global chemical industry's responsible care, health, the safety, health and environment protection initiatives. And also Mr. Barry supporting Sri Lanka Responsible Care Council, as Mr. Piris also mentioned, and from the inception of this responsible care work in Sri Lanka, very many times visiting Sri Lanka, spending a lot of time with our industries to enhance and improve our Sri Lanka's industries, supporting managing their chemicals related issues. With that, I would warmly welcome Ms. Barry Dyer to proceed with your key presentation in this webinar.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your very kind introduction, which perhaps is almost longer than my presentation. But I would like to pick up on the theme that Mr. Irani and Mr. Piris have already mentioned, and that is the conflict between regulation and responsibility. We presently have the situation where countries are pleased to regulate in the expectation that things will automatically improve. And as we all know, that will not happen. It will not happen for a number of reasons, but primarily because we are ignoring the human factor. People will do what they do regardless of regulations. If it was that simple, we would pass a regulation that said no more workplace accidents. And everybody would then go home healthy and looking forward to a nice dinner. Regrettably, it's not that simple. And as we have heard already, you will never ever have all of the resources that you would like to have in order to help keep people safe. You're well aware that the chemical industry is perceived as the most hazardous industry in the world. And the reason for that is the spectacular and tragic accidents that periodically occur, more recently in Tianjin port in China and Beirut port in the Lebanon, where spectacular explosions killed many people and was further evidence of how incompetent we are in managing the chemicals we all need to maintain and improve our quality of life. What is often overlooked is that for every major chemical incident, hundreds, if not thousands, of workers are adversely affected by their unwanted exposure to chemicals in their workplaces, whether it's in a factory or out in the field or even in their homes. We are all subject to exposure to chemicals. And it's indicative of the fact you are all here this morning that we wish to do better. All we need is the guidance and the resources and the enthusiasm that collectively we can all make a difference. And that is particularly true to small to medium-sized businesses. To us here in New Zealand, a small to medium enterprise is not the number of people involved. It is the fact that you do not have in-house expertise to address the safety, health, and environmental concerns that you need to manage. So I'd like to discuss what constitutes a good employer, because whether you are running the largest multinational business in the world or a small family business with 1 or 2 people, but an extensive chemical inventory, you would want to be a good employer. Could we have the first slide, please?
Okay. Ms. Lakmini, are you going to share the presentation with Mr. Barry's present? Okay.
Next slide, please. So what I put onto this slide is some ideas you might like to apply to yourself in your business operation. Do you consider yourself to be recognized as a good employer? And what is actually involved in that sought after title? You provide a very high quality product or a service to those you regard as customers, but also in respect to your compliance with the law. Your contribution to your national economy is important, but it cannot be achieved if people are being harmed or put in danger as a result of your products and activities. This is why we put so much focus on the workers understanding the hazards and the risks associated with the chemicals they are using, often on a daily basis. Now, of course, if you're in business, you want to be profitable. If you're not profitable, you're not going to last very long. But profit does not lead the way. You can be profitable and still be a good employer when it comes to safeguarding people and the environment. And now the global climate change issue is taking more and more attention. Then to be a good steward of the local environment is also important. If you are cutting back on your energy use through conservation and the use of alternative energy sources, but still dumping your hazardous waste in the local river, you cannot claim to be a good steward of the environment. And safety, health, and environmental performance are intertwined. It is not possible nor desirable to separate them out. Yes, we can address each of those individually, but they still constitute the core of your business operation. And after all, it is society, not your peers and not your family, but society who will determine whether or not you are a good corporate citizen. Now, that may be contributing to conservation efforts. It might be providing one of your staff to go and talk to the local high school students about a future in chemistry. It may be that you sponsor good works in the community, but at the end of the day, you wish to be regarded as a sensible member of your local community. Next slide, please. So where is that going to be assessed? And here we have what I think are some interesting aspects in the value chain to which you are contributing. So you are responsible for the quality and performance of the product or service that you are offering. If it is not up to standard, then you are committed to improvement. Your products reflect sound science. As we have seen with COVID, science is the solution to many, if not all, of the problems we presently face. As an example, regulation was never going to solve the COVID crisis, but the development of several vaccines in an incredibly short time frame of 2 years and still ongoing is a remarkable endorsement of the importance of sound science. We can also design into our product the life cycle criteria where the product, once it has been employed in its primary purpose, can be recycled, reused, or disposed of in a responsible way. Now, in many countries, that has yet to be addressed. In my own country, we still export our hazardous waste for treatment in other countries. And the sooner we put a stop to that, and the sooner we learn to recover and recycle and responsibly dispose of our hazardous waste, the better off we will all be. This leads into then the innovation. Like Sri Lanka, New Zealand is a net importer of chemicals. We have very few world-class, globally sized chemical facilities, but what we do have, we try and ensure is the best of the best. And the example I would like to tell you about briefly is agrochemicals. Small countries are ideally placed to develop the niche agrochemicals required by your own consumers in quantities that are not of interest to the major global suppliers, but are necessary because you have the particular understanding of the conditions in which your customers wish to improve their agricultural performance. We share our best practice with whomever is interested. We share it with government because we want them to know that we are on board when it comes to helping the government achieve safety, health, and environmental objectives. We share with our fellow companies because we all learn from experience, and you are constantly learning. You will never ever get to the end of the learning experience, and rightly so. And of course, we also pick up along the way better ways of resolving the issues that our company and our workers face, both individually and collectively. And we do all this in an open and forthright way, providing there is no competitive disadvantage. Then it behoves all of us to learn from each other's practical experience. Next one, please. Now, Mr. Perez has already mentioned the importance of commitment to both global and national legislation. I take the view that we don't need to wait for regulation. The Lankan Responsible Care Council is presently working with government to help you develop practical and cost-effective legislation to improve the management of hazardous substances or chemicals in Sri Lanka. Companies are doing that now. More companies can begin doing that after this webinar. It is not necessary that we wait for regulations to appear. When they do appear, they are often very prescriptive and actually difficult to implement. In my country, our chemical regulation regime is very, very complex and very difficult for business operators to decide how best to comply. We answer questions every day about how to implement the intent of a regulation. It's very important to keep a focus on performance and not prescription. Why? Because there is often more than one way of addressing a safety, health, and environmental issue. But once it becomes prescribed in regulation, your authorities will say, this is what the law says, this is what you must do, you have no option. And amazingly, but not surprisingly to us, that option may be the worst of several options, because very few regulators have industry experience, and even fewer understand how industry actually operates the way we do. So it's easy to write a requirement without understanding the outcome and the difficulty involved in implementing it. So we have this program in Responsible Care called Continuous Improvement. What does it mean? Well, you see the highlights here on the slide. What it means is that there is never just one right answer. What you do today and what you are confident is compliant today may not be compliant tomorrow or next week or the month after. It is a process where we continually review our performance, in particular, upskilling employees, researching products which are just as effective, but perhaps contain less harmful ingredients and are easier to recycle because they are less harmful to the environment. And when we look at all of those issues, you will see that going on in your factories every day. Some of it has been going on for 100 years. Putting guards on dangerous machinery, for example, is not new, but not recognizing that your employees, perhaps in the garment factory, are working in a contaminated atmosphere because of the chemicals involved with the textiles and the dyeing and the processing. They don't realize they are being exposed to the ill effects from those chemicals because the factory workplace is hot, it's poorly ventilated, and they may not realize that they need protected, such as a mask, in their daily chores. But you, management, should know that, because you are speaking to your workers on a regular basis. You understand their concerns about chemicals in the workplace, and you are proactively doing something about it. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Next slide, please. So we put all that together and we pride ourselves on being a reputable business. It covers many things, some of which we've talked about already, but you will learn more in subsequent workshops and seminars from your association. But while you have sound business practices, it doesn't necessarily mean you are covering all of the criteria. Mr. Diller mentioned that safety is often not part of your business plan or your business policy. Well, the short answer is it has to be. just as there are cultural differences that might prevent a worker from speaking out about something that they regard as hazardous or dangerous to management because they are not accustomed or comfortable about doing so. And that is why we have this important feature called management by walking around. And that literally means getting out of the office, down on the factory floor, walking around, talking to your workers and finding out those things that they are concerned about and endeavouring to do what you can to address them. Not always possible, not always within your ability, particularly if you are importing a problem substance as part of your production facility. But there is very little in real terms that can't be addressed and dealt with in this process of continuous improvement throughout the life cycle of the chemicals you are involved in. And the purpose of the Responsible Care Initiative is to help you come up with a satisfactory solution to even long-standing issues. And there is everyday evidence of how this is being achieved. Next slide, please. It is common practice in developing economies, particularly in agricultural-based economies, to see workers using chemicals in a pair of shorts and not much else. I'm pleased to say that workers appropriately wearing PPE or protective dress for the task involved is becoming more common and not before time. So a sustainable business, which we all aspire to, represents a combination of the factors on this slide. You have taken steps to provide a safe working environment regardless of the circumstances. Indoors, outdoors, heavy machinery, chemicals, dangerous tasks, less dangerous tasks will all be the subject of continuous improvement. As never before, we need to be conscious of protecting the environment. And by the environment, I'm talking about not just the workplace environment, but of course the wider natural environment. And you will be all too conscious of not only the threat to people through the likes of pandemics, but the loss of habitat for our flora and fauna, the destruction of the rainforests that represent the lungs, the breathing capacity of our countries, and the effect on such industries as fishing and the provision of sufficient food for our growing population. As employers, as managers, and as workers, we want to demonstrate that we are the best we can be. And that is only possible by sharing our experiences and being prepared to say, yes, we got that wrong, but yes, we can do better, and that's exactly what we intend to do. We talk about complying with the law, very commendable, but in responsible care, we regard compliance as simply the first hurdle in a long race. Compliance is important, but compliance will never be the complete answer to all of the issues involving safety, health, and environmental performance. Therefore, we've got to strive to look beyond compliance, and Lankan Responsible Care members and prospective members recognise that, and that is what you are working towards, and congratulations to you for doing so. Of course, leading by example takes many forms. Next slide, please. Right now, I'm sure you are looking forward to the performance of your Olympic team, and we wish them individually good luck and good fortune so that they can come home as role models for your future generations, and we can celebrate their success with our ongoing success as a responsible business and a reputable employer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, very with the very generous wishes for our Sri Lankan team. With that, yes, it makes a big sense, because so we have a responsibility about the future generation. So we all know about the sustainable development goals, and we are talking about it, and so we have to act on that, especially if you look at the chemical flows, because if you look around, all the materials and all the components that we are using, we are consuming, is linked with some kind of a chemical component. So we are, most of all the people we are very aware about these material flows. So it's our responsibility to make good to our system, thinking of the future. Some can be reversed with the technology, even as Mr. Ranga mentions. Now we are in different stages of industrial revolution. So industrial 4.0, 5.0. So there will be more on that. So future technologies and development of the knowledge will support some in future to make the future of our generations, nature and the human being, to have a good world. But however, some will not be reversible. So therefore, we have to act the present context with our capacities. So that is, I think, that is the point I got from Barry's the very final thoughts regarding our Olympic team and other thing. Thank you very much for very broad discussion of the putting up your thoughts, views on how these how we can support or respond to the support the making of a workplace environment with the support of responsible care. So somewhat it broad, but you have very clearly identified some of the key points that we need to have more discussion on the further sessions. So yes, we can understand the concept of responsible care and how we can penetrate to the industries, those who are working with this sector. It's not just one-off thing. So we have to have a very continuous approach on penetrating, and the industry should have a continuous approach to utilize of those type of concept. With that, again, thank you very much, Mr. Barry. Always we enlighten with all your thoughts, views, experience sharing with us. With that, I would like to invite again Mr. Ranga Dilhan to create a link or create a kind of a practical scenario to showcase some kind of practical scenarios for our participants, how these two concepts, the responsible care and the workplace safety, to showcase some kind of real experience that you have already gone through. That would be important, those who are thinking of joining or come on board to join hand with the responsible council or to get the benefit out of it. So therefore, I would like to invite, without taking much time, to go ahead with the presentation or the sharing of experience related to responsible care, how responsible care being really supported to workplace safety, taking your own example. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wahala. And as we discussed, responsible care is one of the ways that you could connect with the industry and also to understand certain guidelines to follow. And many of us are talking about we do not have a culture for safety, whereas the culture is something that we need to inculcate within the organization. As I said in the previous presentation, also one of the challenges is we have to manage employees who are from other part of the organization, where that when you consider the beyond organization, the culture is different. So it's like this when we consider our journey also, we've been evolving as an organization over the years. We've been working with different organizations. We've been following different frameworks because we've been working with global brands, as well as they also have certain standards. Then we have certain other international standards as well as responsible care as well. So one of the ways that we started in this journey sometime back was about how we developed our resources, especially the safety champions. We were looking at what training needs that they need to have, how we could enhance their knowledge so that they will be able to support for the decision made at the leadership level. So responsible care was one of the framework that we use, especially with series of trainings that we had, especially for last 5 to 6 years, in terms of providing, enhancing the upskilling the workforce, especially the resources who directly work in the space of health and safety. So having said that, next step of us was we were looking at how we could change this so that everyone is contributing for safety and everyone is becoming a safety agent or a person who will share the message across the organization. So we look at 3 different pillars. One is leadership, other one is process, and at the end we talked about people. Under the pillar of people, we were looking at mainly how we could get more engagement from the employees at all levels of the organization. With that, we have come up with a program called Workplace Safety Facilitator Program, which is been executed across the organization. That means not only in Sri Lanka but also in our overseas locations as well. So I thought of sharing this because most of you are thinking how we will inculcate the culture, how we can build the culture, and how we will ensure more broader engagement at all levels of the organization. This is one of such initiatives that we implemented. So when it comes to this program, we have certain programs called, we have taken this program from FLA, concept of the training, and where that we have a trainer who been trained, and then we have facilitators, and also we have agent. How does it work is every factory we have facilitator who been trained by someone who has improved the knowledge. For example, from responsible care, we had a series of trainings in the past, and they have that knowledge, and those trainers will train the facilitators. Facilitator is for we have the 3 structures mainly: trainer, facilitator, and agent, where facilitator is training 20 agents. That means every 20 agent there is a facilitator. The facilitator is the person who is guiding the agent. These are not from the leadership level. These facilitators are mainly from executive level or middle management level. And those facilitators being trained on what we learned in the past, especially the resource persons in the factories, those being trained. Then what we have done is for every production module or department, we have an agent, right? That agent is a person who's been trained by the facilitator. So that agent will cover respective department in terms of the required training. I will further explain this for your understanding how this training structure works. So training for, first what we do, facilitators will do training for the HS agents. that is representative from each module as well as each department. It is a monthly exercise. That means every month there is a particular topic. That topic is we share in a format called safety information sheet. That safety information sheet is an A4 sheet document. That means the size is small. That means we are not going to cover everything. It's a very basic training that we try to cover because we want to create the knowledge and understanding up to the bottom level of the organization. For example, we may talk about what's GHS label, how you read that. That is the whole topic. It is all about, we talk about the how you read the GHS label. It's not about other aspect of the chemical management. It may be about what is emergency the exit. So what is emergency exit, that we talk about that in terms of why we need that and how we use that, when you need to do that, and where you have the emergency exit. That is what we cover from that. That's all. So it's a very small or condensed training focused on one area of it, right? So that is the whole, the content is considered. How we do that? Once we train the HS agent will go to the respective module or the department, and they do training maximum 10 employees at a time. These are not lengthy trainings like ours. Maximum time duration is 10 minutes. We recommend to limit it to 7 minutes. 5 to 7 minutes is the recommended time. Then you can go up to 10 minutes. You give the safety information sheets to everyone and explain what's contained in the information sheet. Then it's been trained not only for the team members, but also HOD. Let's say I'm a team member, the employee in the shop floor. I train even my management because these are also part. We want to cover 100% of the employees in the plant. So that is the structure basically we do. For example, we have something called core leadership stand, that is internal standards. For example, as you see in the screen, every month we have select one core leadership standard. For instance, February we talked about chemical, then January we talked about fall protection, electrical. The one topic is selected. It's not about comprehensive training on chemical. It's about one area. For example, it may be, as I said, symbols in GHS labeling. Maybe that may be the area that we cover, or what is secondary containment maybe. That is what we may cover. So likewise, we cover only one area for that. Then what we do is that topic we decided, or we make that information sheet standardized so that we will make it centrally and share with the respective plants to make it in local language, because we have different languages in different plants, as we have different geographical locations within country and outside the country. And also they need to use their own photos in the factory because it has to be more reliable. After that, the facilitators will train the agents, then agents will train the employee. Then we will review, or we will monitor how it will work. This is one of the examples. As you could see, this is a simple information. As you could see, we have different, we have a basic content, title is there. There is a key message, why we do and the importance of it. Then we have a pictogram. Then the content, the basic things that you need to do, what you need to focus on. So, and as you could see in the picture also, we cover it with a minimum, very less number of employees, less than 10, so that they will get that. And these are some of the photos you could see how we do. The first photo is about how we train the agent. It's not about agent is training the facilitator. It is not about agents is training the employee. This is how facilitator train the agents. Then the next two photos you could see how agent will train the employees at the ground using the safety information sheet. How do we track that? In factory level, we track it as well, because that is also very important for us to get the have a proper track in order to ensure that everyone is covered with this program. Therefore, we do cover that, and also we have been tracking it at divisional level as well, to which extent numbers employees being covered with that. And this is basic structure of the facilitators. For example, their facilitators in every location that we are operating, and these are the this is how it is. Overall context is considered, we have agent for every 20 employees. That means that agent need to cover 20 employees per month. So this is how it's been tracked, the percentage, and despite the challenges, we've been tracking how these employees being communicated and training using this particular mode of training. So how do we do that? There are certain benefits that we have gained through this because this will strengthen the resource structure, because earlier it was limited to 1 or 2 who've been in charge of health and safety, or certain line managers who've been trained, because the initial effort that we have built to build the capacity of those employees who have direct responsibility to implement health and safety, as well as the respective line managers who may take the decisions. But here it's been enhanced so that we have resource structure at the shop floor level as well. And also this very simple and short effective training, it's not lengthy training, it will focus on one particular thing, and there is an action that employee to perform based on that. Framework for developing leadership skill, because this is one of the way of developing the leadership skills, especially employees who are in shop floor, because for example, HS agent is doing the training for his or her line manager as well. Then all levels of engagement, this is from top to bottom as I explained, and also this is create a different way of recognizing the HS contribution, because those who are a part of this HS agent, and they will be recognized separately. So the challenges, of course, we also had some challenges, as currently also have some challenges. One of them is this training model is very small, 10 minutes training is something not familiar for us, because we used to have 1 hour, 2 hours training, and the perception is what you can cover in 7 minutes or 10 minutes. So that is one of the challenges we also had at the beginning, to convince not only the management but also the employees at the who engage in the training also, how you will condense it into one topic and topics. So our general perception is we need to cover many things in a training as much as possible, irrespective of what the audience or what the person who's attending for the training is getting to absorb it. Second thing is, we are in a pandemic, so even though we have this monthly plan and all this, even though we have a track record, it's really challenging to complete this, because there are a lot of disruptions for the operations these days because of the COVID impact, and also some trainers or HS agents may be being quarantined, right? So those challenges are there. So therefore, managing training cycles, it's really difficult, but somehow we may assign alternative person and continue. And also there is a tendency, we are in an industry where that our turnover is comparatively high. Because of that, some HS agents also get better opportunities as well, because some of them improve certain leadership skills as well, because this program that we've been doing for last 2 years. And therefore, they also have some form of opportunities outside the organization, when we will have to replace them. Replacing is or not easy, because once we train an HS agent through our training program, it's very difficult to replace. So overall, in summation, this program is like to create the culture. As I said at the beginning, we use responsible care to build our resources. The next step is about how we will go it into the next level, especially for the employees in the shop floor, how we could reach out them to give the required knowledge, so that they can apply it in the day-to-day life, and also make them confident, as well as they are clear on what they need to assign, and also to understand the risks associated with what they do. So with that foundation, with the initial training and development of our resources, now it's been going down to the factory level or the employee level. They also have become change agents or the trainers that will eventually help us to drive the culture within the organization. So that's one of the practices that I thought of sharing with you. With that, I will conclude the session and control back to Dr. Sampath.
Thank you very much, Mr. Iranga, again sharing, because as responsible organization institutions, sharing your best practices is one of the key in success of collective success of what we are thinking of achieving in terms of human being and also the nature. So thank you very much for sharing this, because that culture actually we have to inculcate among industries, because what we do, what we experience, sharing with others will not harm for our business or whatever. So therefore, thank you very much again for sharing your experiences, a new way of doing things, a new probably some we can consider that new innovation of implementing some other things. So we better thank you very much for sharing those type of information. With that, actually, we have gone through all our initial presentations. Now we can open the floor, engaging with the all panelists, and we can open the floor to have questions and queries. You can unmute and you can open your video, join with us to ask the questions, clarifications, any queries. So I think our panelists will support you, will open to any question that we are receiving from you. So with that, I would like to invite, if is there any particular questions, then we can take them.
Just while people are thinking about their question, could I just say that one of my early visits to Sri Lanka was to meet the management team at MAS. And I was then impressed with the fact that they were so proactive and eager to learn from the Responsible Care Initiative. And this excellent example of a case study we've just heard proves that they have not rested on their laurels, but indeed are embarking on continuous improvement. And upskilling your workforce is a superb example of just how many benefits there can be. You didn't mention it particularly, Iraga, but I presume your casualty rate, the injuries that suffer in the workplace are consistently low, and certainly so much better than other industry sectors which are not taking your proactive approach. I certainly congratulate you on what you are doing.
Mr. Pires, Mr. Ranga, do you have anything to comment on that?
Dr. Wahana, can I make a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Pires, please.
Yeah, I think this is something very important what I think Iranga showed us. Most of the time, industries think that the technical solutions are always required for improving safety. And but they don't understand that it is the employees who should be properly trained, and they understand that the required precautions are taken. So technical solutions might be helpful, but that is secondary. Even some companies I have noticed, they consider personal protective equipment as the number one. They start with that. But we have to remember that that is the last resort, and they should start with creating this employee culture, the safety culture, and also, I mean, after changing the people, only that they should go for technical solution, because even a technical solution will fail if the people don't know how to react to that, how to implement that. I have one very good example. Many years ago, I was working in a textile company. The monthly accidents were 362 monthly, out of 2,500 employees, we had 2,505 employees, 362. The reason was most of the accidents were due to slipping on the ground and falling. And most of the accidents have taken place at the entrance to the toilets. So they come running and there's water in that place and they slip and they fall. So we had to change the behavior of them to minimize the accidents. And then by, I think like Eranga said, that by changing people, by changing the behavior, we managed to bring it down to about 60 per month. So even that was big, but still, I mean, this shows that the people behavior is very important when it comes to accident prevention. I think that's an excellent example Eranga gave, how you go down to the grassroots level. Thank you.
With that, actually, so there's one small question from my end, actually. Again to Mr. Eranga, as now you are playing as large industries, so how we can support SMEs so to get engaged or get involved to inculcate the safety culture in terms of the general safety aspect, and also very specific areas like what we are addressing under responsible care. So how you can, what is your opinion, what is your view on that?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Wal. That's a great question. In fact, it's because most of the time we talked about the large players where the SMEs may not really be in focus, and also most of the good practice sessions mainly in the world, across the world, is considered is mainly from the large players, whereas there is a significant representation from small and medium scale. They may not be really been focused in sometimes, and they really need some support, and their capabilities, especially in terms of financial aspect, as well as the right people for the organization, that capability may not be there. In that context, what we could support is definitely responsible care is one of the ways providing support, as well as large players. We also can support in collaboration with RC maybe, especially to share certain practical ways of implementing. We may not be able to focus on high-tech solutions, as Mr. Piri said, because it may not be the solution for them. The way that they've been operating, it's a matter of changing the mindset, and also to come up with simple solutions that we could do. Because I also have experienced some of the SMEs, when we go in the first day, it's more about how do they manage their workplace or the space, how do they manage effectively. The basic housekeeping may change for large extent. Then you could introduce basic information sharing. For example, if there is no label for chemicals, start in labeling them. Then if you don't have secondary content, just have a small the wall and make it first. And that little by little we could be able to support for that. What we could do is mainly we could organize some capacity building programs, and also we could go to the factory and see what's improvement that we could give, because RC also doing that with the partners. So same way that we could go and see what are the areas that we could support them in terms of improvement. And third one is benchmarking. They can benchmark from others, and we are open to share the good practices. Then they can visit and see what are the practices there. And also we could guide in terms of what we failed as well, not only because in general when we are having a factory, we should try to share all the achievements but not the failures, because whatever the achievement, there are certain failures behind on that may not be visible end of the day. So those can be also shared, so that other the special SMEs can learn from them and apply the way that is applicable for them. So therefore, I think RC definitely could support, and for that we are ready to collaborate and support for the industry on that aspect.
With that, actually, Mr. Piri's RC, can we, if we can come up with some kind of a material, so small newsletter or something with the local language, to transform these knowledge in a layman terms to implementing a small and medium scale enterprises, I think would be great. Mr. Pires, what do you think on that?
Yes, thank you. I think I was thinking when Ranga was making that presentation, this type of short, very small safety information sheets, if we can develop, and maybe we can prepare a file with several, and we can probably provide some training to maybe a facilitator in each company, SMEs, so that they will be able to share the same model what Ranga is using can be used in SMEs. But I think we have to prepare these safety information sheets following what they have done. Maybe we select some suitable common issues. I think that's a good solution, and that's what I was also thinking. Yes, we should, I think of that.
Thank you, Mr. Pires. Mr. Barry, this is somewhat we are expecting some kind of a technical explanation to a certain level on this now. How responsible care could support to provide required guidelines to transform the organizations, focusing on the key areas prescribing value chain reputation. So you have highlighted the value chain reputation in your presentation also. So in the if we technically speaking, what would be the approach to address that?
I think there's probably two things that could be done very readily, and that is that the leadership in the company recognizes that safety, health, and environment is just as important, if not more so, than the other business factors they are accustomed to taking into account. The second thing is that if you approach the workers, you will very quickly learn what they think is important and what they would benefit from should that resource be available. I was just thinking, listening to Aranga's excellent presentation, that if the Lankan Responsible Care Council could organise a visit to an MAS site for small business operators, there would be so much they could learn from simply seeing for themselves a safe and healthy workplace, a tour of the warehouse, good housekeeping evident, and sit in on one of those short training sessions. It would help generate the ideas that they could adapt to their own circumstance. And remember, they're not all going to be as well resourced as the major companies are, but it's an opportunity to inspire what I would call some lateral thinking. We could never afford to do that as it is, but how could we adapt that lesson, that material, to do what we want to do? Now, in my role as leading the ICCA's capacity building program in Africa, we are developing the concept for associations like LRCC to bid for funding support to create the short videos in the local language to highlight a particular teaching requirement. Product labels is always relevant to businesses big and small. When the worker is looking at the label, what is the message they should be getting? How do they convert that pictogram and those warning phrases into practical, realistic requirements? So there's an opportunity there to make sure that you are able to reach out to whatever level is represented in your business environment to help people do better. And if there is no commercial conflict of interest, it is even more important that those who can share with those who cannot.
Yeah, thank you very much. And so there's another thing that I can add. I can ask, followed by the previous one also. Now, yeah, it's very clear now. We can have some kind of a mechanism to transform some of the information to local communities. So is there any way that with your experience, there are a lot of different countries, they have different best practices, to share these best practices among countries, the organizations? Will there be any possibility, because some of the best practices are not shareable to certain contexts? So is there any experience that you have, or you, what do you suggest for that? For if we can, in the large organization with different countries, will there be a possibility to have experience sharing kind of a mechanism to think of under this responsible care organizations and the network, or setting up set up in this global context?
Absolutely, there is. Again, in my role as leading the capacity building team, we formed a group of subject matter experts. And we have about 25 in our pool at the moment, and they cover virtually the life cycle of chemical-related activities. So we can talk about the GHS, we can talk about the transport of dangerous goods, we can talk about preparedness for chemical emergencies. Any topic that you can think of, let me know. And if there are experts available, there are then two options. You can set up a webinar and we can invite one or more of our subject matter experts to participate and deal with that particular issue for you as an association. Or if the matter is of wider interest, then the ICCA, through the Responsible Care Leadership Group, can organise a workshop on topic X, to which all the associations can join in and learn whatever it is more about that particular issue. So it's not just a narrow group of opportunities, it's as wide as it needs to be.
Thank you very much. And that is really good information, because if our audience is having some kind of a queries, information to get more, so you can communicate with our Responsible Care Council, and definitely they will organize a webinar, as Mr. Barry mentioned. So thank you very much for that information. With that, I think so we can wind up the session. Mr. Pires, is there anything to add? Mr. Barry, final comments or thoughts?
Well, perhaps I could just say that I'm sure everybody has learned something of value in this session. And I commend the Langton Responsible Care Council for helping people look beyond the dreadful COVID scenario that we are all facing, and have taken the time and made the effort to participate in webinars like this in the interests of being better employers and even better employees, based on what is being put across as a result of the excellent work of MAS, but also the ability of Lakmini and the council to respond to both members and non-members by providing the advice and guidance you need to safely manage chemicals. And until we get back to the happy day of being able to return to face-to-face meetings, then regrettably, the webinars are about as good as it's going to get. But it is relatively easy to make that transition to an audience focused on a given topic or a range of topics that will add value to your operation, whether you are large or small. And I'm honoured to be part of that ongoing process of continuous improvement through the Responsible Care Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Peiris?
I think I have no more to say. Barry has said, I think, everything important. First of all, I must thank Barry for joining us and giving us some, I think, very important thoughts, and also Iranga for his the commitment to work towards the help in the industries. I would suggest, whether you are a member or not, those who are present here, you can contact Lanka Responsible Care Council. We have a coordinator who will receive all your whatever the inquiry. We'll be able to help you some way. If it is members, it's easy and you don't have to, we can facilitate much faster. But if you're non-members, still we are not reluctant to help you. So we invite all of you to look forward to contacting Lanka Responsible Care Council and also join in future programs as well. So with this, I thank everybody. So over to you.
Thank you very much. With that, we can wind up the session. Before we wind up the session, we can invite as you all as Responsible Care Council for the next webinar will be on chemicals waste management. Please be contacted with our social media work, so then you will be notified with the next webinar on chemical waste management. And before we wind up, I must thank Barry, Mr. Peiris, Iranga, joining with us, giving a very good presentation, sharing the experience with our participants. And behind the screen, I must thank, there are a few people behind the screen looking at the technical matters, coordinating this work. Gayan from Haley's, one of our partners in organizing this, and Tharindu representing Sri Lanka Responsible Care Council, and also as an academic partner, we are continually work with this Sri Lanka Responsible Care Council, Sabaragama University of Sri Lanka Eco-Business Management degree program. Lecturer Chandimal is there behind the screen coordinating this thing. I must thank them to taking effort, spending their time coordinating, facilitating this work. With that, thank you very much all. We can stop this. Have safe stays, preventing that in this COVID pandemic situation. Thank you very much.